I get the game face on now.
That's it. So you get much sleep last night, Linus?
Can you tell? No, we played hockey last night. Actually, a couple of agents were there with us, but they only give the worst ice times to people of our age, right? Like all the kids and the junior teams, they get all the beneficial ice times. Like they always stick us at 9, 10 p.m., 11 p.m. starts, which makes for a very late evening. So yeah, it happens, but it is what it is. Like the price of doing business if you want to play hockey in Canada, right? At my age. So
yeah, we have curling and we had a late draw on Tuesday night. So we finished around, we'll probably get home around 11:30, 12. So I know what it's like, but it throws off the week, right? You get to sleep at 2:00 every day anyway. So what are you worried about?
Hello and welcome to the 21st episode of the Living a Dream podcast, a podcast for real estate agents that discusses strategies to grow your business to its maximum potential, while at the same time making sure that you're in control of your career and have the time to live a balanced life. So I'm Linas, Kilius, managing partner of Century 21 Heritage Group. And with me, as always, is the co-host of the podcast, broker, partner, and general manager of Century 21 Heritage Group, Eryn Richardson. Eryn, how's it going?
Going well. Very well. Very well, Linus. Thanks for the intro.
Yeah, no problem at all. Just diving right into it. There's so much I want to cover and talk about today. The biggest of which is we've seen a real big shift this year in market conditions. We're seeing record levels of inventory, which we're not used to seeing over the past several years. And I find a lot of agents are having trouble adapting, not only agents, but obviously sellers as well, adapting to this new landscape. You find the same things as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny, we say record levels of inventory. It sounds like we're way over inventoried, but all the indicators with regards to it is it's just a normal level of inventory, right? So it's a balanced market, but we're feeling like it has shifted so much because I would say the last 20 years of doing this, there's only been a couple times where it has pushed towards this level. And we've just been lucky, I think. I say lucky on the buying side anyway, or selling side as well. Like just anytime there's a lot of activity in real estate, prices are going up, buyers are getting into the market, making some money in a few years. So it's been healthy. And I wouldn't say it's not healthy. I just say it has been a shift for agents for sure.
Yeah. And it's the fact that we're used to a certain thing and people have short-term memories, or maybe someone's only been in the industry for like a couple of years and just isn't used to this kind of market conditions, right? And you have to shift your mentality. Sellers have to shift their mentality too, that like, you're not just going to necessarily put up your property and sell it within a few days in multiple offer situation too, which was maybe what happened the last time they sold it. So one of the biggest struggles that we're finding at the office and just talking to agents in the industry, in the area in general, is they're really struggling in a lot of cases to get buyers to list properties at proper prices to make sure that they move, because there is so much competition now. And I know that's something that we're definitely going to be addressing a little bit, because I'd love to pick your brain on it and see how you address those situations and how you advise in these kind of conditions.
Yeah. And it is in the past, agents have been the hero, right? You list a property, sell it very quickly, highest price, sellers super happy that they got the price that they could. So now they are looking towards the listing agent and saying, why is my house not selling? What are you doing in order to promote it? You told me this would be an easy and smooth process. How come it's not? So and the agent's stepping back going, oh, I've never been talked to this before. So how do you handle the dialogue and the discussion? And the first thing I can say overwhelmingly is to get ahead of it. Know that is going to happen. So it's all about managing the seller's expectations of the marketplace. So the knowledgeable agent, the one that can show the market conditions, whether it be statistically or talk about them effectively, will have a seller that's on the same page and on board with plan B if plan B needs to happen, as well if everything comes down to pricing effectively.
Yeah, and I've always advised the same way as well. If you can educate your sellers and get them on board with whatever the strategy is that you're pitching to them, almost help them come to the same conclusions you've already come to, it solidifies it in their mind, right? I know a lot of agents that will just go in and say their price without giving a lot of background and information about why they think they're coming to this number. And if you don't take people along for the ride, take them along the journey to get to that number, they're not going to trust it as much, right? They might trust their own instincts. They might trust what their neighbor got like a few years ago on their property, and they expect the same thing. And I find it's harder to convince people unless they've bought in to exactly what you're saying is the best strategy on a property. And then once you come up with a list price, again, never promise anything, but also give that forward guidance, right? This is the plan, but what we're going to do is we're going to see how the market reacts to it, see how many showings we get, what kind of feedback we get, and then make sure that we have a plan to adjust as needed. The biggest thing that we're seeing a lot of now is like properties get listed too high, and then having to have that difficult conversation with the sellers. And then the sellers, like, if you have to do a price reduction of $50,000, like they feel like they've lost that money, even though they never had it to begin with.
And let's start right from the beginning in terms of the fear of the agent not getting the listing. And that's where this comes from. And when an agent goes on a listing appointment and they're going to give a price on the house, they think that price is going to dictate whether they get the listing or not. If you're the highest price and you can get the highest you can for the seller, is going to say, I'll go with you. So having that fear of being honest with them, I would say that is a unwarranted fear. And you need to get over that as a listing agent to know that the seller is not looking for you to lie to them. And they can see through. And what I mean by that is if you can show them the most value to get the highest price, that's what they're going to choose their agent on. And they're going to see through somebody that comes in and shows no value and then has a price that's too high. They're going to say, listen, I think they're just trying to get the list. So really put a little bit more faith in the seller and knowing that they're pretty smart. They can see through the BS that some of the listing agents will come in and try and just get the listing with a high price. As long as you show your value, every slide you have, everything you talk about should be about getting the highest and best price. But let's talk about the list price and maybe wait till the right time to talk about price, and that you've done as much research as anyone else or better research than anyone else.
Yeah. And one narrative I sometimes go with as well is if they're super sticky, you just can't get them down from a number that you know is too high, to say, hey, listen, we can try. Maybe we'll catch lightning in a bottle. You get really lucky. You'll have that one person who just like falls in love with the house or whatever. We'll list it at that price, but in 2 weeks, let's take a look to see how things are looking. If we haven't had any showings, let's adapt, and then we'll try it at the price that I'm suggesting to come in at, type thing, right? So you can still do the things, but get the buy-in for the full strategy, right? Not just like for like the today's date, like this is the list price we're going to go forward, then surprise them a couple of weeks later, but like, hey, maybe we should adjust the list price. If they knew that this is the plan ahead of time, it helps them digest the information and be a lot more on board with the strategy going forward. It's not like a list price, it's a listing strategy that you need to pitch.
Yeah, I call it plan B, right? And I'm not saying that what you had just said can definitely work, right? So you've decided to take on the listing, you've decided to work with the seller on it, and the hope.
Well, you definitely want to avoid listing high.
I totally get it. And that's it. But you do know, and let's reality sinks in, is that you want the listing, right? You want to be able to help the seller sell the property. You think you're the best person for the job. So you don't want them going with somebody else. It could be a mistake for them to do that because you're going to get the highest price for them. But the problem is, and this is where I take out the a bruised banana or the old banana sitting at the shop at the grocery store. So when you go into a grocery store and you're looking at the fruit section, you've got your apples and your bananas, and they're all shiny and they're polished and all the rest of it. If that banana doesn't sell, what happens to the banana? It starts to look old, right? It starts to go a little brown. And what are you going to have to do to get that banana to sell? The grocery store is going to put it on sale. And they're going to have to really reduce the price on that banana in order to get it to sell, because there's a stigma that banana is not going to taste as good unless it looks great, right? So this can work with both staging the home, making sure you have a banana that looks amazing, that somebody's going to come in and purchase for full price. There was one the other day, an agent came in and said, the house show's great. It's really clean, but it's just not updated. It's actually weird because it's got eclectic furniture, stuff that's not normal. And I said, it's the non-normal banana. It's the banana that's got a different shape or different sizes and stuff like that. So people are going to still want a discount on that because it's not the same as everything else. There may be a buyer out there for it at that price. So you can always sort of use that analogy in terms of what you're going to need to do in order to get that to move. And typically it's getting the right price for that product.
Yeah. And making it the best it can be on day one is so important, like you said, from price, but as well as appearance. And it is extremely important, but sometimes you don't have that luxury, or you put it on the market, and sometimes people get it wrong too. Like maybe you overprice it because you thought that you misinterpreted the market conditions and everything, where there's some unknown factor that just affected the price of it. So one thing I would love to get your take on, especially Eryn, is like that conversation about if you do get it wrong, or you do need to have that conversation about reducing the list price with somebody. They're starting to get a little angsty. They're like, hey, like, what are you doing? We need to do more marketing. We need to do more of this. Like they start pointing fingers, right? We see that happen all the time. How you can handle those situations to the betterment of your client and actually trying to get them sold, and like having that conversation without getting them really pissed off at you.
Yeah. So you took the risk, right? You took the risk of taking on a listing that maybe you felt wasn't positioned properly in the marketplace in terms of price. Because I think that if you do position it properly with the right price, it will sell. As long as the expectations of how long, like it's not going to sell in 5 days, but yeah, in 5 weeks, we're the best one on the market at that price. It will sell. That's just market price, right? It's the bottom line. It's just going back to the definition of what market price is. And if as long as they're a buyer in an open market and that's the best value for that price, it will sell. So let's say you got it wrong, right? As long as the seller's on the same page with you amongst the journey, right? And saying plan B, it's all about communication. I was talking again with an agent in our office. Her strategy is to have everyone on a WhatsApp chat. So the WhatsApp group is for the sellers and anyone working on the listing, and they communicate daily. So showing just happened. Have you come back from getting groceries, whatever it is? I've already talked to the buyers and they said that there's some interest, or they felt this or felt that. Again, one of the other agents I spoke to the other day, this house that had all these kind of eclectic, weird furniture or whatever it was, she asked the question, should I tell them, I don't want to offend them. They love their furniture. And of course, you have to let them know what the feedback is. Now, it doesn't have to be your opinion because you don't want to offend them in your own opinion. But when you're talking about buyers, and that's the feedback you're getting from a buyer that's walked through the property, the seller needs to have all the information, whether or not it offends them or not. So some scripts and dialogues are good ways in order to handle that situation, such as getting their permission. Linus, your house has been up a couple of weeks. I've got some feedback I want to share with you, but I want to ask you a question. Do you want me to give you the actual feedback, and don't blame me for anything that they're saying? This is just coming from the buyer, or do you want me to sugarcoat it?
And don't sugarcoat it, please.
And you'll get that response mostly. So don't blame me approach, right? Don't blame me. This is from the buyers, and we can talk about ways that we can overcome these objections. And this is just one buyer, but if we're getting a consistent feedback from them on this, then we're going to have to look at ways that we can either adjust the way the house shows or the price of the house, right?
It's a difficult conversation to have with people at any point. And that's going back to listen to property as well. It's the advantage of having someone come in like a saging consult, right? Because then it can come from someone who's like a professional who has an eye for this stuff. And they can be the I'm going to say quote unquote bad guy in that situation, right? Because you want to try and maintain your like relationship with the client and everything in the best way that you can. But I think being honest with everybody and trying to get them on board and like you said, like the not sugarcoating way of approaching that is definitely the best way to go.
Yeah, and talking about living the dream in real estate, right? If you want to have a great career with great people, don't take on clients that you know are not going to fit within. If you're not going to work well with them, there are listings it's okay to say no to. I just want to back up and say somebody's expectations way too high on the price, you're going to have them be put into a situation where they're going to be upset with you. You're going to get a lot of buyers upset with you because they're saying, hey, listen, why are you even trying to get that price? That's ridiculous. Like they're going to look bad on you as a listing agent, and you're going to start to get a reputation for having these overpriced, non-saleable listings. Neighbors are going to notice that you couldn't sell the house, so they're never going to list with you. So let me just preface this by make the right choice to take the listing, first of all, and work with the buyers and sellers that are willing to work with you and be on the same page. It's the best business to be in, and your business will get better taking on clients that obviously you enjoy working with. And if they're on the same page, that's the best.
Try telling that to a new agent who's looking for listings, though, because it's easier said than done. Everyone always thinks they can, work in the framework or whatever that the seller would like to do, and try and get them to the point where you can get to a sale in the end. Like I said, that's great in an ideal world, but I imagine a lot of people would have trouble adopting that strategy, especially if they're a newer agent or someone who's like hungrier for business.
I'm glad you're saying that, because that is the reality of the business, and a lot of agents do take on that. I also use that on a listing presentation and let people know that right up front. Just so you know, there's a couple agents in this business, new agents that'll take on listings in order just to work the listing to satisfy their buyers, like big teams and stuff stuff like that. My job is to make sure that your house shows the best, is priced the best to get highest price. Don't make the mistake of choosing somebody that's brand new. And again, brand new agents, I get it. You're going to take that listing, but I'm also going to use that against you, even if, and I would use that dialogue if you are a brand new agent. I want to do it the right way. I've got the best company and the best support behind me in order to get your house sold. And I don't want to make the mistake. I'm building my business from the ground up here, and I'm going to make sure that you are super supported to get the highest and best price so that I can grow my business, get your referrals, neighbors will love me. So it's all in the dialogue, all in it. But in the end, yeah, you might take on something that's a bit higher as long as you get the buy-in in order to have a plan B. But an unmotivated seller at a high price, it's actually going to waste your time. It's not a good foundation to build your business on. So yeah, just keep that in mind.
I think the biggest thing is just like you said, the buy into the strategy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just trying to come up with that plan and making sure there's clear expectations of the direction that you want to go, and making sure that's a realistic way to go as well.
Mm-hmm.
If you take an overpriced listing that you know is not going to sell, and you know that the motivation of the seller is no point where you're going to be able to get them to where you need them to be, then it is just a waste of everybody's time. And there's going to be a lot of probably blood, sweat, and tears put into it, like in some cases, literally, right? To try and get that going. And then at the end of the day, it's not going to come to a sale. Picking and choosing is sometimes a good thing, to try and step back and just be a bit objective about the situation. There's so many emotions involved, right? Especially if you're, like I said, like you're that newer agent looking for that next paycheck. Try and think about whether or not this does make sense to take on.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on a little bit though, we're talking about a tough market now, potentially with convincing sellers to be realistic with their pricing. But there are some rumblings, some good economic indicators, which says that we might be in for a different story come the springtime.
Mm-hmm.
We've got interest rates have been coming down fairly rapidly, and even potentially even more rapidly with the next couple of interest rates announcements. I was looking at a little TD, and I know a lot of the big banks have very similar projections as well. Just TDs happen to be the most accessible online. They're looking that right now we're at 4.25 is the interest rate, but that they're looking to have that come down to 2.5 and even further down in 2026, but 2.5 by the end of 2025. And it seems like most banks and economists are in agreements that that's around where things will normalize to, in quote unquote, like a normal economy, is that 2.5% interest rate zone, which is like half of what it was at quote unquote the peak, right? Like earlier this year, 5%. So that is good news for anyone who's looking for financing. So that is one thing that kind of spurs demand a little bit. There were also some changes to mortgages recently, making it a little bit easier. I'm not going to get into the specifics of them, but make it a little bit easier for first-time home buyers and some other cases to get financing as well. So there's a lot of things that are moving the needle on the demand side of things. Like we've got a lot of supply, but once demand starts going up and eats away at some of that supply that we have, things can shift pretty quickly. We were both at our national conference a couple of weeks ago, listening to some economists and analysts talk about where things are going in the spring. And usually these are people that are pretty pessimistic individuals. Like economists are generally pretty pessimistic about things, but like to see them be very optimistic about how real estate volume as well as pricing is looking next year to be going in the positive direction was music to my ears, at least.
Yeah, we've been in such a lull in the marketplace in the last 2 years in terms of people not really wanting to do much. Buyers, of course, with the interest rates up where they were at, are not jumping into the market, and the sellers are just waiting, see if we can just get through this unknown interest rate hike. So now that it's normalized over the last 6 months and starting to come down, I would have expected to see sales increase and inventory levels come down because the sales are increased. The interesting thing is the inventory levels are going up and the sales are just starting to, you're seeing that engine start. So the sales are starting to pick up, but it was the inventory levels that spiked and that was a spike in September anyway, right? September, October, you do see a bit of a spike. It'd be interesting to see what happens in the next couple of months. It looks like, and you had mentioned it was funny, you mentioned buyers putting their houses up, and that's what happens. They want to make a move. They're buyers and they're becoming listers, but they have to list before they purchase right now, right? So they don't know necessarily what they're going to get for their house. You're seeing a lot of that, which is a good sign, right? So people are looking to make that move, and maybe they got burnt by an interest rate hike, and they're saying, listen, maybe we overpurchased the last time and we want to downsize, or we don't need the huge house anymore. I'm not sure, but the inventory levels have gone up.
Yeah, but I mean, with the interest rate decreases, like
Mhm.
the actual mortgage rates haven't come down like rapidly, like to
No,
match suit
that's
quite
true.
yet, too,
Yeah.
right? And it's like a few interest rate cuts isn't going to move the needle a ton. But what I find really interesting, we're coming into the winter months, right? So like the real estate market goes into somewhat of a hibernation during that period,
Mhm.
but we still will be getting those interest rate announcements throughout the winter and into the new year. So I think where we're really headed for is in the spring when everyone starts to reactivate in the market,
Mhm.
be like, hey, interest rates are like a couple percentage points
Yeah.
lower than they were last year this time. Suddenly financing does become a bit more available for people on the buy side. People can start affording houses, and then you get the whole fear of missing out bit starting to kick in too, because people are like, hey, housing prices might start going up soon now that we have this demand returning to the marketplace. Like, you want to get in, buy low, sell high type thing, right? Like there may not be a much lower time to be buying than in the very near future before things start to reignite. And I don't think things are going to reignite like COVID levels again anytime soon, but I do think that there's going to be a bit of a spike come the spring, specifically with people looking to get into the marketplace. You'll find that people can now afford those mortgages they couldn't before when they were considering shifting from renting to buying and whatnot. So these are just things to consider come the spring.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. All those market conditions based on indicators and everything. I would be as far as to say I can guarantee the price is going to go up in the spring. Like, really,
Oh, be careful!
I'm
Be
not,
careful when you take out that crystal
I
ball on
know,
yourself.
and I'm okay with that. Mostly I'm not, but today I am. I'm because unless something else happens world-wise, anything pandemic-wise, that sort of stuff, I always put that preface. But the reality is it's the supply and demand. And right now we do have the supply. The demand is going to increase with the lower interest rates. And come January, the indicators would be like we've extended a window of an opportunity for purchasers. And I would jump on that wagon every day if I was looking for investing in real estate. So if you're investors, you have a window probably from now until February to pick up some leftover inventory, some inventory that's on the market that maybe's had a tough time selling, and get in as soon as you can, because come spring, all indications are going to be we're going to be down like 3 more quarter points at least, I think, possibly by spring, and that is going to be it's going to be a busy spring. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah. And I know that one narrative to go with too is people be like, oh, I'm going to wait for interest rates to come down a bit first. One thing you could do is you can go with a variable now and lock into a fixed as the prices come down lower, or
Exactly.
even just take that variable now, depending on what your appetite for risk is. There's always risk with everything, right?
Yep.
But that is a strategy
Mhm.
too. Like, you can do that, break your variable, lock into a fixed at a lower rate, presumably in a few months or maybe 6 months, whatever it happens to be when things are down a little bit lower. But right now, like you said, you've got high levels of inventory that might disappear quickly. So you have distressed sellers at the end of the year being like, oh crap, I don't want to have to wait until the spring, relist in the spring and go through all that. So they may be willing to take, like, you might be able to find those deals out there in the marketplace. So they're definitely there to be had. The number of agents I know who are like, oh, can someone just like send an offer? I don't even care if it's a low ball at this point, right? Like, we need something on paper to talk about. Like, there's a lot of sellers out there who
Yeah.
will be willing to entertain those quote unquote low ball offers, and people shouldn't necessarily be scared to go in a little bit lower if something's been on the market for a long time.
But the interesting comment from the agents are it's actually the people interested in selling that are saying, I'm going to wait January, February. We've have a lot of people right now on the fence and again on the listing inventory side of things. So it's just an interesting dialogue that I'm having with agents. And typically the agents are the first to hear about market shifts. They're the first to hear from the buyers and the sellers. And I would have expected a lot more of the excitement being on the buy side, but the excitement from a listing standpoint is there as well. So that's a good sign, because last 2 years, both sides have not been excited. But with the shift, yeah, get ready for situations. And even today, there was a couple instances last week where there was 30 offers on a property in the GTA. Right. So it looks like there's some sparks and some agents that are starting to look at putting together those multiple situations again, based on trying to get the highest and best price for their sellers, of course.
So what, do you have any plans for the weekend?
Yeah,
Shifting the
just family plans, right? Yeah,
got a big turkey
you got a
planned for
big,
the table?
you got it. Pumpkin carving, some stuff for the kids. Yeah, we've got it all planned out.
Where do you get your turkey from?
I think it's all in the way you do it, right? So I actually think it's less about the bird and more about your procedure to whether or not you're deep frying. This year, my brother's taken it on, and he loves smoking meat. He's going to smoke the turkey this year, which is going to be interesting.
How long is that going to take?
I know.
I've never been big into smoking, but I know it's like a long process.
Well, he's got a procedure, right? He's going to brine. He's going to do the whole marinade brine, and I think it's going to maybe be a hybrid smoke, but he's got a big Traeger, and nothing he has ever cooked on that thing has come out bad. So that'll be a big one. And by the way, I think I'm back to the butterball. Like I think last couple turkeys, yeah, we get the fresh ones, and they've got a turkey farm out by my mom's house and stuff. But the butterball, there's nothing wrong with a good butterball, right? They get that basted butter injected, and it always turns out good.
I honestly, I think you hit the nail on the head a little bit too. It's about how you do it.
Yeah.
A few years ago, I got a little bit of egg on my face. So I'm usually the one who ends up doing the turkey, but I cooked it upside down. I didn't even realize it until he took it out. It turned out amazing. It was fine. Like it was a little not as crispy as you'd want on the breast, but still it turned out okay. So apparently you can still screw it up too, and it'd be fine. But
the hardest thing with a turkey is getting the white meat and the dark meat to be at the same, like both amazing. You almost want to cook them at two different temperatures or cook them separately somehow. But that's the hardest part for sure. By the way, I've never cooked a good turkey. I've never got it right. One we found out one element wasn't working one year. So it was like 4 hours in, and it was like barely. So that got botched, and we're just like, yeah, I'll let the people like my brother and my mom, and yeah, they'll figure it out.
I feel like the problem for cooking turkeys is you only do it once, maybe twice a year, right? Maybe 3 times, depending on how many holidays you do turkeys for. But it's just not enough experience to like really get the procedure refined. Like I feel like every time I'm like, oh shit, what am I supposed to do for this part of the process? What am I supposed to do this part of the I almost relook it up and relearn it every time because I'm not doing it all the time. Whereas like things like just cooking meals, like you're probably cooking similar meals over and over again. You gain that knowledge and experience as you go. But for turkeys, because it is such like a more rare opportunity to cook those turkeys, that I feel like you just don't get that. You can't experiment as easily and as often because the other thing is you're trying to cook for so many people. You don't want to disappoint everybody. So you can't try and find whatever is going to be the least offensive way to do it all too.
I'm a big spiral ham, honey ham fan. So I'll take a honey ham over a turkey any day.
Yeah, I love turkey. I eat it all the time. I could if it was practical too. It's too bad that turkeys don't come in smaller sizes. I guess they're called chickens.
Yeah, chickens, hens. Yeah, I like the stuffing, the gravy. Put that on top of the turkey. I'm good to go.
Oh man, I'm getting hungry. I missed breakfast today too, so I have to have a lunch to make up for it. I think maybe this is a good place to end the show off since we're starting to get a little bit into the weeds here. So if you like the show, subscribe to our show pretty much wherever you find your podcasts online. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on those sites because it definitely helps. You can check out our website, livingthedream.show, where you can listen to any or all of our shows. Or you can head over to YouTube channel as well at youtube.livingthedream.show to watch our podcast video streams on demand. Eryn, thanks as always. Have a very happy Thanksgiving, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody else who's watching and listening.